All right, we're off and running. Welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles now. Chase Sr. here with you. Hope all of you out there are having a fantastic Tuesday. Coming up here on the show, things just got very interesting for the Philadelphia Eagles. And we're going to go a bunch of different directions here on the show, taking a look at the NFC East standings, the NFC standings, take a look at some of the competition that the Eagles have for that number one seed, some NFL storylines as well. So let's get into it here on the show. And obviously, on Monday Night Football, the Birds moving to 7-2 with a 10-7 victory over the Packers. It was a defensive-oriented game, and I know a lot of people are panicking about the offense. I certainly hear you, but also keep in mind, it was frigid cold in Green Bay, and there were wind gusts which impacted both offenses on Monday night. And so that's why some of these numbers that you see very low, and that's why there were no points scored until the third quarter. You combine that with the fact that these are two of the top defenses in the NFL, and that's why this was a low-scoring affair, a defensive slugfest, and the lowest-scoring Eagles victory in quite some time, in over a decade, I believe. And my takeaways from this game: this pass rush for Philadelphia was scary good. The best collective pass rush in a game that I've seen from the Eagles this year. What they did against the Giants prior to the bye week was impressive, but the Packers are a much better team. And speaking of that, what a debut for Jalen Phillips. He was sensational in his first game as an Eagle, got acclimated with the scheme, started right away. His snap count was high, and his impact was felt. The offensive concerns, they return a little bit. What I mean by that is that outside of that opening drive, until that drive where Saquon Barkley had the 41-yard run after the catch, then the 36-yard bomb from Jalen Hurts to Devontae Smith, a lot of 3-and-outs, a lot of conservative play calling, a lot of predictability on this Eagles offense. And so I thought, hopefully, they were going to have some momentum going into the bye week with what they did against Minnesota, what they did against New York. That didn't happen, but I also think how good the Packers defense is impacted what the Eagles did on offense. In the process of that 10-7 win, Eagles moving up to the number one seed. We'll get into that here in a moment. And this was a culture type of win for the Birds. Winning close games is a skill, and under Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, they thrive in these crunch time, gotta have it, big balls moments. Speaking of that Eagles pass rush, this is a big storyline coming out of that Packers victory for Philadelphia. This pass rush is so good and so scary that I think it's one that can help propel the Eagles to a Super Bowl. You think back to Super Bowl 59, no blitzes, 6 sacks of Patrick Mahomes, 22 pressures, 14 hurries, 5 quarterback hits, 3 knockdowns, 2 picks, and 1 forced fumble. It was one of Mahomes' worst games of his career. And this is something that can carry you in January, into February, at the end of the year, when you want to start rounding into form and playing your best football. And against the Packers, the Eagles pressured Love on 17 of his 42 dropbacks. Second highest pressure rate of Love's season this year. When Love was under pressure, he was 3 of 12 passing for 21 yards and 3 sacks. So if the offense plays up to its ability, the defense continues to play like that, this is an all-around football team. And obviously that pass rush wowed a lot of people because of the addition of Jalen Phillips. Howie Roseman looks even smarter after making this move. Gave up a third-round pick for Phillips. If he leaves, the Eagles get a third-round compensatory pick back for him. But if he's trying to earn a contract extension, he's 1 of 1 at the plate. 8 pressures, 7 hurries against the Packers, 2 quarterback hits, a 19.4% pressure rate. He had, I'm going to give him credit for the fumble forced. It was him and Reed Blankenship who punched the ball out on Josh Jacobs on that critical 4th-and-1 stop. Jalen Phillips also had a fumble recovery. He could not have had a better debut. And again, that's a pass rush where if they play like that, it can help lift you to another Super Bowl. In this offensive era, a pass rush like that allows you to beat elite quarterbacks across the NFL. As far as the standings element of the show, the NFC East standings. Is the team catching the Eagles? I mean, they are 4 wins ahead of the Dallas Cowboys in the win column. 7-2, 2-1 on the year. They play the Cowboys here soon. Cowboys 3-5-1, 2-1. when the Eagles are playing their best, there ain't a team that could sniff Philadelphia in this division. The Commanders are having a bad year. I had warned everybody going into the year. Last year, they won a bunch of fluky games. They have the oldest roster in football, and they were so good in areas that often don't translate year over year, like third and fourth down. And so they've had injuries this year. Some of those issues have reared its ugly head. Washington 3-7. Then the Giants 2-8. And I covered this news with the YouTube short on Monday. They have fired their head coach in Brian Daboll. He went 9-7-1 in 2022, his first year as the Giants head coach. He won Coach of the Year that year. The Giants won a playoff game on the road against Minnesota. Daniel Jones played well. Saquon Barkley got healthy. He played well. And it looked like the Giants found something in Daboll. Since that season, up until he got fired, he went 11-33 as the Giants head coach. Now, I think that they should have fired Joe Shane as well. And I worry about their roster building with Joe Shane as GM because that roster is barren right now, especially on offense. I like their front four, but their secondary and linebackers aren't great. So I just don't like the future direction where the Giants are going. And I thought maybe that Brian Daboll is going to hold on to his job because Jackson Dart was playing well early. But when you lose as badly as they've lost in ugly ways like they have of late, I don't blame them for trying to find a head coach. I want to now shift to this. And this is an important talking point of our conversation here today. Which teams are the Philadelphia Eagles competing with and against to get home field advantage in the NFC? Because after the win against the Green Bay Packers, given the NFC landscape, things being wide open and crazy and hectic inside this conference, things are very interesting inside the NFC. And I think it's really important that the Eagles get home field advantage. Obviously, that helps you when the playoffs come around. If you get that number one seed, you get that first round bye, and you're able to rest up, recharge, and refresh a little bit. But the Eagles at Lincoln Financial Field, especially in the postseason, have such a superior home field advantage. It's very hard for other teams to come into South Philly, play at the Link, and knock off the Eagles in the postseason. This has been the case for a long time. Since the turn of the century, since 2000, the Eagles at home, Veterans Stadium and Lincoln Financial Field, they are 14-5 in home playoff games. They have also won 4 straight home games in NFC Championship games. And so you look at the NFC playoff picture right now. Eagles up to that number one spot, 7-2. On their heels, the Seattle Seahawks at 7-2. With the way that they're playing, they're so scary. I know a lot of people will point out that they haven't really beaten any quality opponents. I hear you, but they have a top 5 overall defense. Their offense is playing extraordinarily well. They're just a scary team and one that you have to watch and monitor as a threat in the NFC. Plus, they're 7-2. And going into Seattle, obviously, would be really hard in the NFC playoffs because that's one of the more difficult places to play in the NFL, and the Eagles haven't won there in an eternity. The Detroit Lions, with that Packers loss, move up to the number 3 spot at 6-3. The Buccaneers losing to the Patriots drop down to the number 4 seed. Those top 4 teams are your division leaders right now. The 3 wildcard teams, Rams at 7-2, Bears at 6-3. They started 0-2. They are 6-1 since then. Then the Packers, a bipolar team, 7 seed at 5-3-1. Other teams in the mix, I don't take Carolina seriously. I don't take Minnesota seriously. The Niners are a well-coached team, but they're so injured. They are there at 6-4. We'll go through a bunch of schedules coming up here and a pathway for the Eagles to get that top seed. But first, this Eagles hoodie here to my right was $75, now on sale for just $58. All you have to do is use our link, chatsports.com/PHI hoodie. Fly Eagles Fly, old school Eagles logo. Birds will be wearing the Kelly green soon against the Dallas Cowboys. That's going to be lit. Chatsports.com/PHI hoodie. So the Eagles right now 7-2. Their remaining schedule, it has been a gauntlet up until this point. And on a short week now, they have to host the Detroit Lions on Sunday Night Football. The Lions have the rest advantage. Obviously, the Eagles are the home team. But with Dan Campbell calling the plays, Detroit may have found something on offense. And so that'll be a hard game. Then the Eagles go on the road and play the Dallas Cowboys in Week 12. Always difficult to play the Cowboys on the road. The Eagles over the last few years haven't always played well there, but they should win that game. Then the Eagles play the Bears on Black Friday. That's going to be a short week coming off that Dallas game. Week 14 on the road against the Chargers on Monday Night Football. Chargers are a good club. So there are some definite hard games here. The schedule eases up a little bit, but not that much. The Eagles will host the Las Vegas Raiders. They stink. When the schedule came out, you're thinking, man, Commanders 2 times in 3 weeks to end the year? That could decide the NFC East. Commanders a bad ball club. They're old. They're hurt. Who knows when Jane Daniels is going to come back, if he comes back with that dislocated elbow. So taking on the Commanders 2 times in 3 weeks, easier than anticipated. But you also have the Bills right in between that, going on the road against Buffalo. Pretty hard slate. And that's why it's so important for the Eagles to win all of these games. And while I'll never apologize for a win, you're 7-2. You have a little bit of breathing room, but still work to do to get that number 1 seed, which is very important. The Seahawks remaining schedule. Huge game against the Rams on the road. Home against the Titans. Home against the Vikings. At Falcons. Home against the Colts. Home against the Rams on Thursday Night Football. At Panthers. At Niners. That really isn't that hard of a schedule. What the Eagles have now, edging Seattle, is the better conference record. I think the Eagles now are 7-1, 6-1 in the NFC, and the Seahawks have 2 losses to the Bucs and the Niners in the conference already. The Lions' remaining schedule: at Eagles, home against the Giants, home against the Packers on Thanksgiving. That'll be a huge game in the NFC North. Could go a long way in deciding that division. Week 14 at home against the Cowboys on Thursday. So back-to-back Thursday games there. On the road against the Rams, home against the Steelers, at Vikings on Christmas, at Bears. I would say the Lions' remaining schedule harder than the Seahawks' remaining schedule. And that's because the Lions had a harder schedule because they had a first-place schedule winning the division last year. The Seahawks did not win the division. The Buccaneers' remaining schedule. This is actually kind of difficult here. At Bills, at Rams, home against the Cardinals, home against the Saints. Falcons on Thursday, at Panthers, at Dolphins, home against the Panthers. So the next couple of weeks, maybe a little bit more difficult, obviously, than the last few games of the schedule. The Rams' remaining schedule. Home against the Seahawks, home against the Bucs, at Panthers, at Cardinals, home against the Lions, at Seahawks, at Falcons, and then home against the Cardinals to round things out in Week 18. The Bears' remaining schedule: at Vikings, home against the Steelers, at Eagles Black Friday, at Packers, at Browns, home against the Packers, at Niners, and then against the Lions. The Packers' remaining schedule: at Giants, home against the Vikings, at Lions, home against the Bears, at Broncos, at Bears, home against the Ravens, at Vikings. So that Bears schedule getting a little bit harder, Packers schedule somewhat difficult. I will say this, though. When you compare the Eagles schedule to some of these other teams, we knew going into the year, the Eagles had one of the more difficult schedules in the NFL. They have their work cut out for themselves if they want to get that number 1 seed. I believe in Philadelphia. They're battle-tested. They have that Teflon Super Bowl type of pedigree. But that's why these games are crucial week in and week out. Because by season's end, this hard schedule can either screw the Eagles because other teams can rise up and get that number 1 seed. Then the Eagles might have to do a 2-7 matchup against a really good 7 seed. That's why I think that number 1 seed is so important. You get that first bye. You hope that an upset potentially happens in the wild card round. And then you're one game away from playing in the NFC Championship game at your crib. So things very, very interesting for the Birds here from here on out until the end of the regular season. And we have you covered every step of the way. What seed will the Eagles get in the NFC? Predict it for me down in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching and supporting.